If you're still stuck on your love for Tudor and aren't paying any attention to Longines, then you're making a mistake. Longines just released a 39mm version of their Zulu Time GMT. I think it's pretty good. It's not perfect, but definitely able to compete neck and neck with the very best in this price range, including compared to the Tudor GMT and the Tudor Black Bay Pro. Stick around and I'll talk you through why I think you should be paying attention to Longines and also what makes this specific 39mm Longines so good. I have a disclaimer this time around. As my regular viewers will know by now, I'm not in the privileged situation where some AD or watch company sends me watches for review. The good thing about that is I can say things the way I want to say them and I'm not directed in any specific direction. What I do is I make my way down to local ADs and boutiques and try out the watches. This time around, I have not had hands-on. But having said that, I still believe we can have an interesting conversation about this watch and its relationship to Tudor watches. What we've got is a 39mm GMT watch with a 21mm lug width, 13.5mm thickness, and 47mm lug-to-lug. How does that compare to other watches? Well, compared to the 42mm Zulu Time, it's got the exact same lug width, but a smaller case and a shorter lug-to-lug that isn't shortened as much as the case size has been reduced. It's also been slimmed down in height compared to the 42. Compared to a Black Bay Pro, same 47mm lug-to-lug, the Black Bay Pro has 20mm lugs and a 14.6mm case. The BB GMT, 42mm, 50mm lug-to-lug, 14.6mm thick and 22mm lugs. You get a choice of 3 steel options and 1 two-tone option. So black, blue, green and two-tone. You can get them on either steel bracelets or leather strap combos. The bezel is ceramic, the watch is water resistant to 10 bars and the movement is COSC certified with 72 hours of power reserve. Longines is part of the Swatch Group and gets their movements from ETA that is also owned by Swatch Group. The specific movement here is unique to Longines. It has an ancestry to other ETA movements. Is it in-house? Well, that's for you to decide. I don't particularly care, much like I don't debate whether Kinesi for Tudor lives up to the moniker of in-house or not. Short version, it's a well-spec'd out movement with a COSC certification by the manufacturer of movements that generally knows what they're doing. The design of the case has a lot in common with the 42mm version, but they're not identical, and I'll get to that. What you do have in common is a relatively sharp and angular design. This isn't a soft rounded case like an oyster case, but it has more in common with the style you might see on a Grand Seiko. It's not necessarily, with Zaratsu polishing, but it's angular. It's got eye-catching beveling, polished flanks that stand out beside a brushed mid-case. The case curves along its full length, but the lugs themselves are fairly straight and don't have a slope or curved end again like a Black Bay or an oyster case. The bracelet is a 3-link construction. It's brushed through and through, apart from polishes on the edges of the inner links, which makes for good contrast and visual variation. I actually kind of like this. It's really growing on me. You get the ceramic bezel in blue, green or black. On the dial against the reho, you have railroad tracks followed by visible numerals that are applied to the dial, the pointer hands that are fully loomed, and a fully color-coordinated GMT hand. The black and green dials are more matted, where the blue is a sunray. Apparently, the green is actually the model that is the absolute top and most popular model in the 42mm line. Now, what's hot and what's not? It's not a perfect watch. Some things are great, other things not so much, and then there's some things that'll depend on what, I or other people personally like. 39mm is a hit. I also think 13.5mm thickness is fabulous. That's a full millimeter thinner than a Black Bay Pro. My guess, though, is that height-wise it's going to wear even thinner than a Black Bay because the overall mid-case of the Longines is thinner than the Black Bay Pro. The BB41 in burgundy has gotten a case update that has thinned down the watch quite a bit, but the BB Pro is still this slab-sided brick that we get in most of the first and second gen Tudor Black Bay models. That's going to work in favor for the Longines. 47mm lug-to-lug is not going to be a problem for most. For reference, 47mm is the same as a Speedmaster or a Datejust. There is one thing, though, to be aware of that will likely play a part in the wearing experience, and that is the lack of slope or curvature to the lugs. They flare out more, which on the 42 makes it feel actually quite long on the wrist compared to what you would get on a curved Black Bay type profile. Again, this is a trade-off because this angular straighter lug style makes for a more dynamic looking watch. The Gen 1 and Gen 2 Black Bays are a little bit squat, making for a chunky look, so think of the Black Bay as like a Porsche, where the Longines is more Lamborghini. The Lambo just looks faster. It might not be, but it looks faster. This is going to be even more pronounced in the 39mm because overall in the 39mm they've reduced the case size, relatively speaking, more than they've reduced the lug length. So you've got a watch that looks thinner and much sleeker in the 39mm version. I like that a lot. One thing to test out once it hits the stores is the steel bracelet. The first center link on the 42 and also on the 39 is a fairly long center link, which adds a little bit of flair to it before it can droop down. Now that could potentially affect wrist wearing experience on the 39mm, but we'll have to wait and see. On a strap though, I doubt it's going to be an issue. 47mm is perfectly cool. Then there's the bezel and dial. The Black Bay Pro and GMT are both very much in a more rugged vintage kind of look. This dial is modern and cosmopolitan and contemporary. The BB Pro is for the jungle adventurer, where the Zulu Time, especially in the 39mm version, is all about cocktails, after parties and late night check-ins arriving from the airport. It's actually closer to a GMT Master 2 in styling than it is to the Black Bays. Fortunately, it doesn't have the bicolor bezel, which would probably put it too close to the GMT Master 2, and I think that would have been a mistake. These watches in 42mm and 39mm come across in the look as premium or luxury. I understand why the green is so popular, but personally I'm a little bit tired of the whole faux lume thing. So my personal favorite right now would likely be the black model, which I suspect is the strap monster of the bunch, which is also a thing that's important for me at the moment. There's another reason I prefer the black model. In general, the dials overall are very nicely done, but there's a fine line between premium and overdone. With the bezel, the applied markers, the GMT hand, the railroad track with our markers, the Longines automatic text, and the 5-star rating, there's a lot going on these dials. It's borderline cluttered, at least it will be to some. Those 5 stars, which indicate that you're dealing with a COSC certified watch, have never sat well with me. To me, I've always felt that it's like you've got a 5-star rating. So viewers rate this watch at 5 out of 5. It just seems wrong. Another thing that irritates me personally is that the black dial has a blued GMT pointer. The blue has a red and the green has a gold. So the green GMT has a hand that is color matched to the dial numeral surrounds. I think that works really well. The blue bezel version just has red, going for contrast approach. Same with the black. I would have preferred a consistent matching approach as opposed to this contrast approach on the blue and the black. Why can't the black model have a white surround or steel surround pointer like the applied markers on the numerals on the black dial? It has a color match date window at 6 o'clock. Love it. The bracelet and straps are all removable with a quick release system. That's excellent as well. But then 21mm lug width. I know why they've done it. Aesthetically, it looks good with those long, thin lugs. But for a lot of people, 21mm is going to be a deal breaker. Overall, I think this is a really strong package. There are some deal breakers for some, but they are few and far between. The 21mm lug width is something some people won't be able to handle. The 47mm is okay, but will depend on how the steel bracelet adapts to the wrist. The rest, so the choice of GMT hand, the applied markers, the shiny, that's more subjective. Some people will see those things as positives, some will see them as negatives, some will see them as minor iterations, but overall see an absolute fantastic watch. At the end of the day, I'm leaning towards a resounding yes for this watch, especially for me personally in the black version, which brings me to Tudor and why Tudor should be a little bit concerned. How can this watch that I say isn't perfect be an indicator of them being a true competitor to Tudor? Well, because the Black Bay Pro isn't perfect either. It's fat, tall, slab-sided. The Black Bay GMT isn't perfect either. It's chunky, it's slab-sided, and maybe a bit too vintage in the dial look. This watch from Longines is a super strong offering. It's got some points that it could do with refinement, but overall it looks good and has some excellent specs in a modern offering. Longines is bigger than Tudor, but we have to accept the fact that for at least the last 5 to 10 years, Tudor has been able to do no wrong. When they release something like the BB54, the internet has an absolute meltdown. It has been the hype brand for a while Longines has just been there in the background. But here's the thing, Longines has direct competitors to all Tudor models, and many of them are really good. They have the Zulu Time that squares up great against the BB Pro or the BB GMT, and it easily competes without taking even into account that they're cheaper than the Tudors. The Hydro Conquest, although not the strongest offering in the line, is poised to take up the challenge against the Black Bays. They have the Spirit or the Heritage Military, which in my mind are stronger offerings than the Tudor Ranger. Both brands have slightly forgettable dress watches with a slight edge going to Tudor in the Black Bay no bezel models or thin bezel models. Additionally, Longines, I think right now has two things that Tudor hasn't quite demonstrated to the same extent. Apart from the BBPO1, which was pretty much a commercial failure, Tudor has taken no chances for quite a while. Longines is succeeding when they take chances, and they are taking chances. From the now old Longines Legend Diver to the recently released Magitech to the Ultrachron, their more non-mainstream models are more successful, more interesting than anything Tudor tries, to the extent that Tudor even tries. Longines is succeeding in trying to do different things, where Tudor, to me at least, is in more of a rut. A successful Black Bay filled rut, no doubt, but it's still a creative rut of sorts. Secondly, Tudor has, apart from the Pelagos, been leaning very hard into their back catalogue. It's given them the BB58 and the 54, but Longines is doing a better job of both leaning into their back catalogue with watches like the Magitech, while simultaneously bringing out designs like the Spirit that just have a slightly more contemporary edge. Apart from the Pelagos 39, Tudor hasn't got a strong contemporary offering on the tool watch side. I think that the edge Longines has here is something that is going to hit a zeitgeist in the coming months and years. Finally, Longines in the Spirit and all other models are consistently cheaper than Tudor for pretty much comparable value in terms of quality and design. Longines are not world-class watchmakers, but they are making some really good watches with good specs that deserve and are rightly getting attention. This 39mm Zulu Time included. It's a strong offering, and if you're anything like me, you should make your way down to the local Longines dealer when these watches hit the display cases to check them out. My guess is they're going to impress a lot of people. So, what do you think? As always, let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.